Hey, what up, friend? It's Adam with Faith Labs. We do daily devotionals for busy Christians. Today's is titled God's Weirdest Judgment, Death by Bear. Let's get into it. 42 young men are screaming as two massive bears tear through them like they're made of paper. Blood, chaos, and terror. Bodies scattered across this dusty road outside of an ancient city. And the man who caused it, he's walking away, his bald head's gleaming in the afternoon sun, completely unbothered by the carnage that he just left behind him. This isn't a horror movie or a Greek mythology. It's 2 Kings chapter 2. And somehow, the guy who sent wild animals to maul dozens of people, he's supposed to be one of the good guys. Welcome to one of the most disturbing stories in the entire Bible that honestly very few people talk about. See, I've spent years reading stories about Jesus healing people, about David slaying giants and Moses parting the sea. But this one made me close my Bible and just sit in an uncomfortable silence for like 30 minutes. Because look, either prophet Elijah had the thinnest skin in biblical history, or I'm missing something massive about what actually happened on that road. You know that moment when somebody makes fun of you or jokes about your appearance and everybody else laughs and you're supposed to laugh as well, but for some reason, something about it cuts deeper than they ever meant for it to? I was thinking about that exact situation when I stumbled back into this story. See, I know what it's like to be judged just like everybody else does. I walk around with sleeve tattoos and big goofy silver hoop earrings, and they don't exactly scream respectable to some people. I've had people cross the street when they looked at me. I get it. I'm sure you have too. You're too thin, too big, too loud, too quiet. We've all been judged. But I've never, and I can't stress this enough, I've never called down bears to attack anybody who made fun of my appearance. So when I read about Elijah doing exactly that, I had to ask, what is it that I'm missing here? Let me do my best to paint the scene here. Elijah had just watched his mentor, the prophet Elijah, get carried to heaven in a chariot of fire. Think about that. Your spiritual father literally ascends into the sky, and now you're just left holding his mantle, wondering if you could ever possibly fill those sandals. Elijah's probably feeling the weight of impossible expectations. He's got this legendary prophet's reputation that he's got to live up to. And he's starting his ministry by walking from Jericho to Bethel. Bethel isn't just any city. This place has a rich history. This is where Abraham built his first altar, where Jacob saw angels ascend and descend on a ladder. Sacred ground. But by Elijah's time, Bethel had become the center of idol worship in Israel. King Jeroboam set up golden calves there. And the people, they'd been bowing down to false gods for generations now. So Elijah's walking through this spiritual polluted city, right? When a group of young men, these aren't little kids. The Hebrew word is N-A-A-R, which refers to young men, teenagers, maybe early 20s. Picture a group of college-aged guys hanging out on a street corner. These young men see the bald prophet walking through their town and they start yelling, "Go up, baldy! Go up, baldy!" Now, on the surface, that sounds like playground bullying, right? But here's what I missed for years. They're not just making fun of his appearance. Go up is a direct reference to what just happened to Elijah. They're essentially saying, hey, baldy, why don't you disappear just like your mentor did? Get out of here. Take your God and your message and go up to heaven where you belong. This isn't schoolyard teasing. This is theological mockery. These young men are representatives of an entire generation that's rejected God. They're the future of Israel at the time, and they're standing in the street mocking the only prophet left who could lead them back to God. See, they're not just insulting Elijah's baldness, they're rejecting God's last offer of redemption. And that's when Elijah turns around. I always picture this as an angry prophet losing his temper, but I read it again. Elijah looks at them and pronounces a curse, quote, "in the name of the Lord," end quote. This isn't personal revenge. This is prophetic judgment. And immediately, two bears come out of the woods. Now, bears don't usually just hang out near cities waiting for somebody to call them. The bears showing up instantly, that's supernatural intervention. God heard the curse and he responded. I'm gonna be honest, what happens next is brutal. The text says that the bears mauled 42 of the young men. That's the Hebrew word B-A-Q-A, to tear, to rip apart. But here's a detail I missed. It doesn't say that they died. These bears could have easily killed all 42 men in seconds. Bears are killing machines after all. But they didn't. They mauled them, they injured them, terrorized them, left them scared and bloodied, but alive. This wasn't execution, it was a warning. Here's what twisted my brain up about this story. What looks like the most disproportionate response in biblical history might actually just be the most merciful. Think about it. An entire generation of Israelites have rejected God. They're worshiping idols, mocking prophets, and racing toward spiritual destruction. They're one step away from the kind of judgment that wiped out entire nations. And God sends bears, not armies, not plagues, not fire from heaven, bears that maul, but don't kill. Imagine being one of those 42 young men. You're lying there, torn up, bleeding, probably thinking you're gonna die, and then you don't. You survive. You're scared, but you're alive. What would that do to your theology? What would that do to your mockery? See, suddenly you know beyond any doubt that the God you've been mocking is absolutely real and terrifyingly powerful. And somehow, inexplicably, he let you live. This story messed with me because I realized I've been that young man more times than I want to admit, standing on a street corner, metaphorically speaking, but mocking things that I didn't understand and rejecting messages that I just didn't want to hear. I remember being 25, 26, high on whatever drug it was at the time, laughing at Christians on social media, making jokes about Sky Daddy and fairy tales for weak people. I thought I was fitting in and being intellectual, but really I was just scared of what any of it might mean if any of it were true. I was those young men on the road telling God to just go up and leave me alone. But here's what this story taught me about God's judgment. It's not about punishment for punishment's sake. It's about breaking through our delusions before they destroy us completely and entirely. Those 42 young men that got mauled by bears they got mauled because nothing else was going to get their attention. They'd rejected every gentle warning, every prophet's plea, every chance to turn around. So God sent bears, not to kill them, but to shock them back to reality. Sometimes what looks like God's cruelty is actually his last-ditch effort to save us from ourselves. My bears weren't literal. They were a drug arrest, a divorce, a night face down in my car wondering if this was how it was going to end. Not fun, not gentle, but they got my attention in a way that nothing else could. The prophet who called down bears went on to heal poisoned water and multiply oil for a widow, raised a dead child, cured leprosy, and brought victory to armies. Elijah's ministry was defined by miraculous compassion, but it started with bears, because sometimes love has to roar before it can whisper. Look, my friend, I don't know what you might be mocking in your life, what voice you're telling to go up and leave you alone, what truth you may be running from because it threatens the comfortable lies that you've built your life on. But I do know this, if God sends bears into your life, if he allows something painful enough to get your attention, it's not because he's given up on you. It's because he hasn't. Sometimes the most terrifying thing that can happen to you is also the most merciful, because being mauled by truth is still better than being destroyed by delusion. Those 42 young men probably carried scars for the rest of their lives, but they also carried the knowledge that God is real, God is powerful, and somehow God still let them live. See, that's not a horror story. That's a love story with teeth. Hey, I'm Adam with Faith Labs. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks so much for hanging out for a few minutes. If you could like, comment, and share, it means the world to me. Lets me know someone's watching these things. And if you're not subscribed to the channel or following, do that now. We do daily devotionals, and I can't wait to see you on tomorrow's. Until then, onward, and God bless you.